Hello, everyone. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to chat with all of you this evening about specifically Disability Pride Month. Um, I'm interested in that word disability in our community, but before we begin, we'll begin with introductions, including visual descriptions as well. My name is Melissa Elmira Yingst, and I'm Latino. I'm a Latino woman with curly hair, with red lipstick on, and have gold earrings on, with a black shirt with a little bit of shoulder and a little opening and a cutout in front. And I'm sitting in front of a white wall, a door, and a yellow curtain on my left side. So, Neil, would you introduce yourself?
Hello, my name's Neil Sprouse. I'm a white male. I have a scruffy beard. I'm wearing a blue shirt, and it says, yeah, it's all mode on it. My background is I have three pictures of sunset. I have a lamp right next to me here on my left. I identify as he, his. I'm also deaf and disabled.
Thank you so much, Neil. Elle? Hi, my name is Elle. I'm a white Jewish non-binary person sitting in a bedroom with a bed in the background, a white wall. I have a towel hanging up and the door is open. I have a moth tattoo on my chest. I'm wearing a black shirt and my pronouns are she and they. Thanks, Elle. Now, Coco, would you introduce yourself?
All right. Hello. My name is Coco Corina. It's my sign, and it's Coco Thomas. I'm black male, black, deaf, blind. I am bald. I have a salt and pepper beard. Yeah, and I got a blue button-down shirt with my sleeves rolled up. I am in front of a gray background, and so it's Coco, he, his, him.
Thank you so much. This is Melissa. My pronouns are she and hers. I identify as deaf individual, and I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with all of you, all four of us. I know that we come from various backgrounds, and I want to begin with one question for the group. What is your view on the word disability? Admittedly, I have my own journey that I've experienced with that word. I used to say that I'm deaf, I'm not disabled. I had that perspective growing up at a certain time. However, lately I've noticed my attitude and my point of view has changed. Realizing the importance of reclaiming the word disability, and that disability is not a bad word. It's not a negative word. But before I get into this, I'm really curious about your thoughts about the word disability. Who would like to begin? Neil?
I feel same as you. I've gone through that journey as well, and I always identified as deaf when I was growing up, and I always thought, and I loved my identity as deaf, but I had cerebral palsy as well. Um, and I'm not sure if that prioritized, and so that didn't really run my life. I identified as a deaf person. I struggled and learned how to walk, and so I really didn't look until later on in life. As I got older, I realized that um, in order to get the best out of life, you want to identify as a disability. You can get that support and those services that I need to succeed in life. Housing support, resource supports, and getting certain services, and that will help improve my life. So if I just identify as a disabled, if I come out as both, I got two wolves in one body, and so now I'm one wolf, and it's working for me.
Elle? Hi, this is Elle. Just like the both of you, I feel the same. A lot of people go through various journeys and with language, and I'm hard of hearing Grew up hard of hearing, became deaf at 18. So using the word deaf is also different, but the word disability, I identify as deaf autistic now. I have chronic illnesses, I'm autistic, and I have some mental health disabilities. So that word has can have a negative connotation to it. And as you're going through life, we're taught by other disabled people and non-disabled people that it's a negative word and not to use it. And I know we use words differently, or able-bodied, or there's words that we avoid using. But it's very normal for us to go through a journey, each and every one of us, to go through this journey. And now I've empowered myself to use that word, and it's not negative any longer. This is Melissa. Coco, do you have any thoughts to share? Do you want to share your perspectives on the word disability?
This is Coco talking. Yep. I really enjoy learning everybody's perspective and their viewpoints. It's very beneficial, and it helps me really I'm taking it all in. So I grew up oral, with some English, ASL as well, APTSL. I went through deaf. So I was very involved with the disability community. And so I spent some time looking, and with all these different identities, and plus looking back and, looking at society and seeing that negative attitude towards disability, and I didn't like the deaf or hearing people with, like all different identities. I would look around and say, I look at disability and all of those different disabilities are the same. And the different identities are the same, so it doesn't matter if we're deaf, blind, hearing, not disabled, we all experience some sort of barrier. So, so that's shared knowledge and shared experiences, and it's an education, and we have to teach that change of mind, and so we all experience those barriers.
This is Melissa. Yeah, I'd like to share an interesting perspective that I used to have. I used to be part of a theater group when I was a young girl, and I worked with hearing people in a hearing community. And obviously I had some oppression because I called them normal. So I ended up acting with a group of other disabled individuals, people in a wheelchair that use wheelchairs, blind individuals. And I remember my first reaction being, I am not a part of this group. I am not like them. And I thought I should be over with the group of hearing people, but that experience actually taught me a lot. I learned that I have my own inner biases. And it was interesting because from my perspective, I felt bad that they couldn't walk, that they had to use a wheelchair. However, when we conversed, I found that they felt bad for me because I couldn't hear. So they had the same type of sympathy or empathy with me. And we're at that point, my perspective changed and I understood their perspective. And yes, we should be more open and more engaging with others that are disabled and not necessarily say we're not a part of the disabled community. So that had a huge impact on me. This is Elle. I definitely agree because the disability community is huge and there's a lot of subsets, different types of disabilities within that larger group. If you learn and study about the power dynamics and white supremacy and how that takes place, and it divides us and it can divide us. So by segregating us and saying that somebody's different or others are different and you empathize with somebody, you think that they're a subset, and it's unfair. And deafness is a unique type of disability. We share a language, even though we're not part of the other disability groups. We continue to be divided. We continue to be weak. So if we don't come together, then things could end up hurting us. Okay, Neil, and then Coco.
Yeah, you are correct. It's Trace. It really does depend on what the individual, what their disability is. We're born with the disability, and as you look at the person, you say all of a sudden you see a person is disabled, maybe because of a car accident or some sudden life incident, and they've become disabled. They have a different perspective, and internally, their internal bias could be the same between us and them. So it's an interesting way to look at that. I've talked with a lot of different people who've had have challenges like myself with CP and other movement issues, and people often think the movement issues are the same, and they're not. It's kind of more when that started. So we've really could be very different experiences being born and raised with it, having it all along.
Coco
talking. I agree with all of you. Based on my experiences, I know as I was growing up, I went through, I was in a mainstream environment, and getting along with hearing people, and I did not know, I didn't know Usher syndrome, I didn't know what it was, but I was picking up oral method, and I was in the mainstream, and I was and looking at languages and loving languages and learning, and then the Usher syndrome began, and I was stuck. It hit me, and it really started for me to become involved in more communities. And at the time before I started losing my sight, so I was looking at people, how they were treating me, and now I knew, and I was preparing myself for how I might be treated. And so now I'm looking at these barriers now, and I'm teaching people, and I'm teaching them the tactile, and I'm teaching. So it's been a positive experience. Obviously it's up and down. I still stand strong, and
this is Melissa. Thank you for all of your input on disability communities. I think at one point or another, we all kind of regretted that word, and we really need to come together as a community and accepting the word disability and looking at it as not a dirty word. There are some positives uses of the word, like Neil mentioned. There's more justification for support services, getting accommodations by letting people know you're disabled. But I also want to talk a little bit more about acceptance and how people treat us as a disabled person. So I've realized that no one is immune to becoming disabled. You just never know what could happen in everyday lives. We could become disabled immediately, so you have to have some inner acceptance of the word disability. So my question is, in the deaf community, one common factor is that we're all deaf. Do you feel like the deaf community is welcoming and accepting of the word disability? I see people nodding no, so please do share your perspectives and your experiences. Elle? Hi, this is Elle talking. I agree. I don't think that the deaf community as a whole has accepted the word disability or disability. So I think in the disability community as a whole, they have not accepted deaf people. And as a function of white supremacy and ableism, that's again what keeps us separate. And it's both groups. It's the deaf community that needs to accept it and the disabled community that need to accept this, because we're all in this together. I've been involved with the autistic community. The same thing happens. We have autistic people that say, well, I'm autistic, I'm not disabled. So I keep thinking, what's wrong with the word disability or disabled? When you say it, I'm this, but I'm not that. That sends a message that that word is unacceptable, and they're not that disabled person. That they may be better or
That's true.
superior than a person that's disabled. I don't quite understand why that happens.
Yes, I would say I'm being involved in the deaf community in 3 different levels. And looking at the 3 different communities, I agree that it's different acceptance in mainstream areas. It's plus in a deaf school, we struggle to understand the other A word, autism and ableism versus ableism. So they still don't understand the difference. In society, has different perspectives. In the employment world, I experience this as well. I've worked with groups and people in the community. Often people will come up and tell me, so, well, you can't work independently, or you can't do this or that. And I struggle in the working world because of that. So, working independently, and that's by whom standard is that set? Working independently, able-bodied people can do all these things. And so I may need more practice and more support, and then I'd be able to eventually work independently. So, and that's in the corporate world. But this industry, I'm looking at, I enjoy, the theater industry, and I know hearing people are a little bit more acceptable of, there's still struggles, with the deaf role and the deaf, what's that? The narratives, and so we have that slow discussion, and it's where we need to be. It's not exactly where we need to be, but it's so with deaf-blind leading, we need to have deaf-blind people as leaders, and that it's as actors, and use them as so we struggle with different negative perspectives, but at the same time we have to look at the whole thing. We have to look at deaf representation in movies, and we focus on one specific person, and the community here plus other communities as well can see the range and specific deaf people. So I really haven't seen a deaf person with other disabilities. Maybe an autistic deaf person, or they have not shown up on TV roles, but I know they exist. The hearing community, hearing parents need to see that. The deaf plus, when the media needs to show that, that there's a place for their children, and they can rise up and they can, and that's part of the reason we need more representation.
This is Melissa Coco.
You said it beautifully. The whole community, including deaf, blind, the whole deaf community, what we're looking at here, because once we've experienced discrimination, that they know, and and they struggle with that. So they know. So let's say all the isms, we don't have to get into that. We know that they're there. We know, and we know that we kind of just push it down and we accept it. But if another person rejects us, and that keeps on continuing to happen, so then we all come together and have that shared experience and all those shared isms. And so we need to change the system. We need to teach and change the system. It's a slow moving, so I mean, it's a slow change, but it's important to teach. And it's not we shouldn't be getting angry and we shouldn't be getting mad. We need to do it in a way we need to do it thoughtfully, when we and with the kids in the future, and teach them, will the future be the same? And if it's on us to change them so that the future generations are more comfortable dealing with different type of peoples. So we're used to dealing with different abilities, right?
Hi, this is Elle talking. I do want to talk a little bit more about Coco and Neil's comments, because I think that's first within the type of oppression and marginalization that happens to us. We end up having trauma, and we have power taken away from us. And people of power are oppressing others and hurting others. So when you see that play out in our oppressed community, we all have a very innate human reaction, and we can't do that to one another because we'll cause more harm. Secondly, Neil talked about working independently, and it's really important to remember that capitalism is being based on our worth and ability to produce, whether in the working world or elsewhere. So we're all human, regardless of what you do for work. Everybody is worthy, regardless if you're disabled, whatever disability you have. Perhaps you can't work. You're still just as important as a human being, period. So that concept of independent living and working is a beautiful concept. It's very inclusive to the disability community. So it's very important to remember that our worth doesn't stop there. We're worthy because we exist. This is Melissa. You're absolutely right, Elle. I do want to also talk a little bit about you mentioning our abilities and different perspectives. Now, where is the line between showing that we are able, but at the same time not oppressing other disability groups? And I think a classic story is about an individual in a wheelchair and a deaf person. So I'll have to be honest, if a wheelchair, using a wheelchair as a deaf person, they bring it out, and I think, oh, they have no clue that I don't need a wheelchair. You see that often in social media where deaf people say, oh, all of a sudden they brought me a wheelchair and I don't need it. But I do remember having a conversation with Neil one time about how that type of attitude of me getting annoyed is very ableist, because I am guilty of then oppressing people that are disabled, whether they're deaf or not, because there may be others that need that wheelchair.
Yeah,
and
right.
I remember that being very impactful, and I had to do some introspective thinking about my attitude. So I want to talk about that line between saying, we are very able without oppressing other groups and other identities and other disabled people. Neil?
You're exactly right. Often we try to, might get together with peers and friends and in a certain situation, and doesn't. Thank you very much. They're trying to make accommodations, but I don't need that. So I try to help frame it and reinforce. They're on the right track, but maybe this is not the right accommodation for me. So there are people that do struggle, or in different roles and different situations. So we try to help them understand, okay, not everyone fits exactly into that particular one size fits all thing. Like me, I go back and forth. In theater, I could do captioning and interpreting. So sometimes, no, I just want the captioning, or I just focus on the sign. So, the accommodations are tricky, and it's tricky business, but it also costs money as well. So we need to understand exactly who needs it and get those things to the right people instead of cutting it off to all those, and the better use of funding. So that's the way I see it. Instead of full no, or no, it's not for me. There might be others who need it, and it's helpful, and that would eventually help them understand, have better perspective.
Thanks for your thoughts, Neil. Coco?
I agree with Coco. This is Coco. I agree. I know that there's a certain mindset. There's ASL and there's closed captioning in there, and it's set, and it's all the same. So that may be oppressive. So now we have voices, and I not everything is ASL or captioning, especially when COVID hit. I was looking at all these different scenarios. There's people hearing and deaf, and they're quick to get information, and so we're getting information quick, and deaf were seeing the ASL, and deaf blind were really, really oppressed in this situation. And I said, nope, you're not going to put me in a box. I'm not going to. So I was got the PT, and I wanted to teach. So really, I wanted to get it was the Black Lives Matter thing. It all happened at the same time. It was all layers. So I cherish my skin. I cherish my heritage, and I cherish all that. And and it's a sad history, but I want accessibility. But said, hey, wait a minute, you're deaf blind. Said, I know I'm a black man, a deaf blind black man. So they have, so we have this picture of, people walking, walking into a door or whatever. So I cherish, so like I went to a doctor's appointment, or, and then so they accommodate, and they ask for accommodations, and so yep, and they bring it to me. So the bottom line is really, all along, I feel like it's getting there, and we preserve that PTSL, and so I just want to add that there's a diversity of accommodations. There's not only one thing, that is only a little, there's a lot of different accommodations, so that we can make things better, and you have your choices, and you can take that. So they're not taking it all away, but so we can work on getting those things.
Hi, this is Elle. So again, I think I mentioned this last year when I interviewed with you, Melissa, when we use somebody's experience as an insult, and that's pain that's been spread within the community. So what is specific comments that are made, and if you're mocked or someone has said something negative about your accommodations, and they're actually making fun of the lack of access. So if you can reframe this situation, you're saying that the airport doesn't understand your access needs. That's a barrier. It's not what the person may need or wants, because as a person that's disabled, their experience is different. So you need to reframe it. Like, we're shifting from handicap parking spaces to accessible parking. So to reframe it, that it's not a real issue with the person. It's an actual access issue. It's not the person's fault. So let's frame it to accessible parking, and really look at the barrier itself. So if you shift the focus on the lack of access or the barrier from the person being disabled, it's a very, very different frame. This is Melissa. We have a minute left. I know this topic is a much needed discussion for our community. Honestly, we've only just scratched the surface in this conversation. So my sense is that this is a conversation that our community has to continue to have. And we need to really value the word disability rather than saying that you're not disabled, but being okay with using that word and understanding and celebrating that word disability. It's not a dirty word.
Right.
It can provide you a lot of accommodations and support. This month is Disability Recognition Month. There's a lot of great stories, and that actually needs to continue and be part of our conversation every day, disability awareness and teaching individuals about disabilities. So I want to thank all of you for sharing your life experiences with us in our audience. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And I hope that the community that's watching really continues to have this conversation in your various communities in order to keep this work going. This is Elle. I want to thank Coco and Neil too. I would love to continue learning from the both of you.
Me as well. Thank you.
Thank you.